Hello, YouTube coin collectors and stackers. Welcome back. I have a really fun one today. The question today is, should I sell these fake Morgan dollars to the shysters down at the hotel? They're there till Friday. So the question came up, hey, Morgan, why don't you run down there and sell them some of your fake Morgan dollars? So before we get into it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you as always for watching. So I'll post the link to that video down below. I actually have two videos where I've gone down and exposed these hotel buying events. But I was speaking with a client of mine, and that client had sold me inadvertently in a big collection of stuff they had gotten. There was a fake Morgan dollar that was mixed in there, and I sent them the video, and they were laughing about it. They said, hey, you should go down there and sell them that fake Morgan dollar we gave you. And so I was like, wow, that's an interesting idea. So let's explore that. Now, before we get really into it, please put down in the comments, if you had fake Morgan dollars like I do, would you go down and stick it to these shysters? And I'll tell you why. So in yesterday's video, I forgot to mention something really important. And I mentioned it in the comments because somebody asked. So I did mention this part. They had no Sigma. They had no scale. They had no other diagnostic equipment like a magnet, calipers, or even a ping tester. They had nothing. They were just hanging out there with none of this stuff. So one of the things that happened was the gentleman took one of the slabs that I had and he starts looking at it under a loupe. And I said, well, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for something that says copy. So here's an obvious fake because it says copy right on it. So that was the extent of the diagnostics that this gentleman was going to go to. Again, he had none of this other stuff. He was looking for something that said copy on it. Now, we all know that, and this is even metal orientation, so there's all sorts of problems with this guy beyond just being a copy. So this one wouldn't have slid by him, so he would have caught this one. So let's put this one aside. He would have caught that one. I have this Walking Liberty half dollar, and you can see that one says right on it, fake copy. So he would have caught this one. It says it on both sides, on the obverse and the reverse. He would have caught that one. So let's go ahead and put that one aside. Let's look at this Morgan dollar here. Now, if this one looks funny to you, it should. Now, I picked this up at a dealer, and they wrote copy on it, but you'll see it doesn't say copy on it. I could easily take that off of there. And what I did with this one was to demonstrate how counterfeiters actually do the fake toning. They'll literally have people sitting out in a parking lot blowing cigarette smoke on these. So what I did was I removed half the toning from it so you could see how really clean and new it was and how fake it looks with the toning removed. And that's one of the ways they will throw you off. And then one more here, right on Liberty's cheek there, fake copy. So he probably would have caught these four because they all said fake on them. So let's look at some of these other ones here. Now, when you don't have any of these diagnostic tools, how are you supposed to test for this other than hoping that somebody has, been so dumb as to put fake copy on the Morgan dollars? The number one way that you can check is with the magnet test. And just to test the magnet to see if it works, we'll go over to these steel cents over here, and you'll see that both of these steel cents stick to the magnet. These are the only US coins that should stick to a magnet because they were actually made out of steel when copper was being rationed during World War II. So these are the only US coins that actually should stick to a magnet. Now, do the rest of these stick to a magnet? So if these shysters had a magnet, would they have been able to catch me? Now, even the ones that say fake don't stick to the magnet. So the magnet wouldn't have really helped them too much. Another thing that's really handy in figuring this out is, of course, your red book. And if we look at the red book, we can see that in this case, a Morgan silver dollar should weigh 26.73 grams or 0.7734 ounces. So we have the scale sitting here. And also it should be 38.1 millimeters. But before I get to that, I got this caliper set for 38 millimeters. And if we take and put all these Morgans in here, yeah, I would have passed that test. We're just doing the ones that don't say copy on them. That one would be fine. This one would be fine. Oh, this one's a little tight, but it's serviceable. And then this guy right here. All right. So they all would have passed the caliper test at 38.1 millimeters. Next thing we want to look at is, and let me refire up my Sigma here because it shuts off if I don't use it and it's not plugged in, is let's do the weight. So I'll get the scale a little closer here so we can see the scale. Let me zoom in. We can really see the scale. And we'll just throw them on the scale here. So first one here, 26.8. Well, how do you like that? That's right in there. Let's do this one. 21.5. Well, we know that one's not real. How about this guy right here? This 1921. 23.5. Well, that's way underweight. And the last one would be this 1895 San Francisco, which should already raise your suspicions because that's a more expensive date, 21.7. So just having a simple scale on hand, which again, these shysters do not have, would capture these fakes. Another thing that you would do is you could do a Sigma test. Now, if you're in the business of doing precious metals buying, so if we take out their little sheet here, and I'll give you 1 second so I can find it. Oh, hold on. Should have had it ready. So, here's a sheet. They're buying gold. Gold. They want to buy. Look at how much we paid for all this gold we have. Great. Okay, well, if you're buying gold, you don't have a Sigma, it'd be really great to run down there with fake gold coins. But here we have fake Morgan dollar. So let's do the first one on the Sigma. And you see the arrows way to the right. It should be in the brackets here if it's real. And so we're going way to the right on that guy. Next one, and this one looks kind of funny anyway. It's a little too shiny for its own good. And that should catch your attention, but that one's obviously fake. This 1921, not a date that's typically counterfeited, but that one sure is. And then the last one here is this 1921, which is real. See that there? It's right in the middle. So I use these for educational purposes with young numismatists and other folks. And so I have a real one mixed in, and I ask them to find the real one. So I'll give them the fake ones and let them, by process of elimination, determine which one's real. The last test we can do, and we'll do it with the real one first, is a ping test. Now, before I could afford a Sigma, or wanted to bite the bullet on buying a Sigma, I'd ping test everything. And silver's got that really nice long ring. And if you listen to that enough times, it really sinks into your brain, as opposed to this guy. And you should be able to hear the difference there. Much higher pitched. And I'll do one more. We don't need to do all of them, just to give you an idea. And you've heard those. We'll do the real one again, just so you can hear the real one more time. So, zooming back out here, these folks, these shysters down at the hotel, don't have any of these diagnostic tools that any coin collector should have in their arsenal. At the very minimum, you should have a magnet and a $20 scale. Now, you don't need to have a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 Sigma, but having these two items, a $35 ping tester with the app and a set of calipers, that's pretty cheap. You can get all of that for under 50 bucks. You should have that. Everybody should have that, because the number one way that you are going to find a fake coin is by weight. Generally, they're off. The weight is off. That's the number one thing. Most of them aren't magnetic, although some of them are. It's real easy just to wipe your hand over the thing, and when the Morgan dollar sticks to the magnet, it's fake. But the number one thing you can do is weigh it. Now, the other thing that's important to know is a lot of key date coins and better date coins, they're faking in the real alloy. So if you go ahead and throw it on the Sigma, it's going to test right, because they melted down some old cull ones and struck up some of these key date ones. So that's a bit beyond today's video. But let's go back to the question. Should I go down there? I have until Friday. Should I go down there and sell them these 3 fakes. So let's talk about the kind of the pros of doing this. Okay, pro number 1 is kind of give a taste of their own medicine. These are all free to me. So pro number 2 is I'm going to make 30 bucks selling them. If you want to see how the whole breakdown works, you can watch my other video where I get into exactly what the offers they made, but essentially they paid me $30 for this. And it would be super fun and funny. You know, you kind of walk out of there feeling like you've done a little bit of vigilante justice, right, to these people. Why not? Why would I not go down there and do this? Well, the number 1 reason is it's kind of the Secret Service sort of frowns on this sort of thing. These are considered counterfeit coins. The Morgan dollar was never demonetized. I could head over to, Safeway right now if I was dumb enough with a real Morgan dollar, or potentially even try to pay. They're probably not going to take it. They don't know what it is. But legally, I should be able to, with an authentic Morgan dollar, run over to Safeway and buy myself, a pack of gum or something like that. Be pretty dumb, but I could do it. So the Secret Service would frown on this. It's illegal. These are considered counterfeit coins. But the bigger reason, other than not wanting to go to jail, which is pretty substantial, is I use these for education. I use these, as I mentioned, for young collectors. I throw the real one in here, and I teach them the diagnostics so that they can actually tell the difference, so they can locate fakes as they're getting into their collecting and numismatic hobby. Maybe they were going to become dealers someday. I use these coins to make videos like this to educate all of you, and I bring these to coin clubs. This one in particular, which is the one that my client sold me recently, that they had inherited with a bunch of legitimate ones, by the way. There's just mixed in there. This is a really old counterfeit. This was bought decades ago. So when I brought this to the coin club, people were fascinated by it. We see a lot of stuff coming in from China now, a lot of fakes, but this is actually a pretty old fake. I don't know if it's a contemporary, meaning it was made in 1921 or in the 1920s, but it certainly goes back a couple decades. So I would say that as tempting as all of this is, as tempting as it is to run down there and do it, I think that, I'm going to get a lot more use out of using these for education and avoiding any unnecessary jail time. But I would love to hear what you would do in the comments below if you had some fake Morgan dollars and you knew these guys were down there and you knew they didn't have a magnet, a scale, a sigma, a ping tester, or a caliper, or any diagnostic equipment, and they would probably take them because they don't say fake copy, which is really funny and sad. Anyway, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video today. Thanks as always, and happy collecting.